Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back. My name is Sarah and I'll be guiding you through your yin class here today. So this yin class is focused on a couple of hip movements, twist and some side body. So traditionally yin yoga is focused on meridians within the body. So this class is aimed around the meridians that support the liver and gallbladder. So yeah, as always there will be modifications offered throughout the class, and if anything doesn't feel right or doesn't feel very comfortable, feel free to park it or come into a different variation that you might usually practice. But I'd also like to say yin yoga sometimes can be uncomfortable. It's a big part of the practice. It's a very meditative practice, I find personally, and I find sometimes where there is discomfort, not pain, discomfort in certain poses, it's opportunity for us to open and look deeper. But there's a lot of discernment in that, so we will work through that and I'll guide you through that in today's class. So yin is very much more of a very slow pace of practice. If you haven't practiced yin before, I recommend putting on a layer, keeping warm, having a bolster, having a blanket to put down on your mat so the mat is extra cozy, and of course having some blocks or props. I also like to practice yin with some socks on, so that I'm even super cozier, because yin is all about the snuggles and the coziness, for me personally anyway. It might be different for you. But yeah, so when you're ready, I'm going to come to lay on the mat to begin with. We're going to start with a body scan meditation. So you might like to use no props, you might like to use some props for this. Yeah, you could have a bolster behind the back of the knees, for example, for some softness behind the back of the knees to begin with. Maybe you've got a pillow behind the back of the head. Just coming to find what feels right for you, for your setup. So coming to lay on down, coming to settle on in. Allowing the arms to fall wherever feels natural for you. Maybe coming to close down the eyes or take a soft gaze. And coming to tune into the body, turning your focus inwards. Taking a few rounds of breath here, consciously inhaling and exhaling. Maybe coming to notice if you could be 5 to 10% more comfortable where you are in your setup, taking any last minute wiggles or jiggles, and then coming back to the breath. Maybe taking a nice big inhale through the nose and a big sigh out through the mouth. If that felt good, taking one more round like so, before allowing the breath to come to its natural rhythm again. Just following the breath as it flows in and out with the mind. Allowing the breath to be your anchor, anchoring you to the mat, to the present moment, to the body, to the mind. And slowly start to bring some awareness to the left leg, to the back of the left heel specifically. And feeling its softness and its weight on the mat. And travelling up to the big toe, the second toe, and the third toe, the second toe, and the little toe. And bringing your awareness to the whole foot. Coming into the ankle, bringing your awareness into the left calf, the left shin bone, the left kneecap, the left hamstring, the left quad, the left glute, the whole of the left leg, feeling it connect to the mat, feeling its presence. Coming over to the right heel of the foot, the right big toe, the second toe, third toe, fourth toe, the little toe, feeling the whole of the foot connect, coming to the ankle, the right calf, right shin, right kneecap, right hamstring, right quad, right glute, the whole of the right leg. Noticing its presence and its connection. And coming to notice the pelvis, the hip bones, the subtle tilt that might occur in the pelvis, the lower back, the upper back, the left rib cage, right rib cage, the left collarbone, right collarbone, the whole of the torso, noticing its presence and its connection. Coming into the left hand, left palm, left thumb, index finger, middle finger, ring finger, little finger. Coming into the wrist, the forearm, the elbow, the bicep, the shoulder, the whole of that left arm, feeling its presence and its connection. The right hand, right palm, noticing the right thumb, right index finger, right middle finger, right ring finger, right little finger. Noticing the wrist, the forearm, the right elbow, right bicep, right shoulder. Noticing the whole of the right arm, its presence and connection. And coming into the neck, noticing the front of the neck, the back of the neck, the skull, the left ear, the right ear, the lips, the nose, the cheeks, and the forehead. Noticing the presence of the whole body as each point connects to one another some way or another. Noticing the body as it connects to the foundation beneath you. Taking a few conscious rounds of breath here. Maybe bringing the awareness to where the breath is in with the body. And allowing the breath to flow in and out of this central point. When you feel ready, coming to gently open up the eyes, taking a few movements through the fingers, the toes, very softly and gently guiding the legs into one another. Coming to roll over to one side for a round of breath before coming up to rise. So all of our movements in yin are slow paced. So please feel free to take your time moving between postures and movements. There is no rush. So we're coming to find ourselves to begin the practice in a child's pose. So grabbing your bolster if you're using one. If you're using a pillow or a big sofa cushion, for example, bringing that also long ways up the mat. If you want a bit of height on your bolster, you can come to bring blocks if you're using them, or Tupperware boxes act just as good. Maybe some big thick books if you've got those too, if you're not using blocks. And we're taking the knees out wide to the outside edges of the bolster. They don't have to necessarily go really wide like the edges of the mat, but we're taking them nicely comfortable wide. And then slowly start to walk yourself forward till you come to find the left cheek so it's facing down onto the bolster or prop that you're using. Allow the hips to sink heavy down. Maybe closing down the eyes. If you are seeking more, maybe you move the props out of the way. Come down lower. And once again, if you're seeking a bit more, maybe you remove all props altogether. Finding forehead or still turning the cheek down towards the mat. Coming to find your edge, your depth and your range. Allowing the breath to guide you. And coming to settle into your pose, your child's pose. And if you've noticed that you've come into your variation, it doesn't feel quite right, maybe you come out and come back in to a different variation. And then when you can, come to find some stillness. Come to resolve to be still. And taking 3 more rounds of breath where you are, knowing there is no rush. And then on your next breath, coming to turn the face so that we're facing the right. The left cheek this time is down onto your support, or maybe down to the ground if you have come all the way down. And then coming back to settle in. Maybe observing where the mind has possibly wandered to. Observing the fluctuations of the mind with curiosity as opposed to judgment. And gently guiding it back to this moment and noticing what there might be to notice.
taking 3 more rounds of breath where you are. Allowing the breath to be long and deep. Your final round of breath, very slowly and mindfully start to walk the hands in towards the body, rolling up piece by piece. Come in to remove any props off to one side so they're accessible for you to use later, and then draw the knees in towards one another. Next we're coming into Sine Sphinx pose. So a few variations that I'll offer to you, but we'll work our way towards the traditional talk version, and then we'll walk our way into the other variations. So from your tabletop, come to walk the knees back away from you, and then slowly start to lower yourself down towards the mat. Reach the fingertips forward until you come to place the elbows so that they're underneath the shoulders or thereabouts. Taking them out, maybe the elbows as wide as the shoulders, palms are facing down. And then bring some awareness into the low back, into the back legs. Maybe take the feet wide as the mat to create some space through the low back for you if it feels like it's a bit dumpy. If you're not having a great time here, maybe start to walk the arms away from you. So there are variations. You can extend the arms out all the way long until they're virtually flat, and then walk them back in until you find your depth and your range. So that might be that the elbows are just slightly in front of the shoulders. Bringing the gaze so that it's slightly down towards the mat, so you're creating length through the back of the neck. And then if you've found a level of depth that feels comfortable, let's say, maybe you walk them elbows a bit further back underneath the shoulders. Allow the head and neck to be soft, gaze comes slightly down. Tuning into the breath. Finding your depth and your edge. Whilst we've been here for a few seconds, if you're noticing that this is still not enough for you, the options are maybe you bring a bolster in underneath and bring the elbows to the bolster. Once again, still drawing the chin towards the chest. Slightly tuck. Maybe the hands come to prayer. And if that's not enough, maybe you're coming to find seal pose. So bringing the hands underneath the shoulders, straightening through the arms, and allowing that chin to come in ever so slightly. And just noticing what there is to notice in different variations that you go into. So we are looking for sensation, but we're not looking for pain. So it's good to stress muscles, ligaments. But once again, if you're feeling a pinching or a tightness, or even a sensation of numbness or tingling, know that you've possibly gone too far. Can you slowly regress out and then come back to an edge and depth that feels appropriate for you? Compression or tension is not necessarily a bad thing for the body. But it can have adverse effects if we're not doing it mindfully with awareness and listening to the signals that our body can offer us in terms of pushing it too far, i.e. pain, or signals like electrical feelings, or sometimes I call them tweaks. I get slight little tweaks sometimes in certain postures if I know I've gone too far. And then come to resolve to find some stillness where you are. Settling the mind, settling the body. Knowing the mind wanders once again, if it's gone external to the room, external to your practice, just lovingly and kindly guide it back to where you are. Noticing maybe if you are wandering, maybe the depth that you're at, maybe it's not enough for the body and you're inviting in that extra depth for the next 30 seconds. Being mindful that if you have extended your range, that you're still listening to the body and not pushing it because we have 30 seconds beyond its range. That you're at an edge that feels challenged, but not hard or painful. Take in one more round of breath where you are. Very gently and subtly removing any props out of the way. Lowering yourself all the way down. Coming to turn your cheek to face the left side. Elbows are bent in cactus. And then drawing that right knee up towards the right elbow for a prone twist. So just releasing through the back. After what we've just done there. If this doesn't work for you, you can come to do windshield wipers. On your next breath, sending that right leg long down the back of the mat. Turning your cheek so that you're facing the left hand now. The arm is cactus. And then coming to draw that left knee up towards left elbow. So we're bending into a prone variation here. Taking a round of breath. And then coming to send that left leg back down long. Coming to bring the hands beside the rib cage, pushing up into tabletop. Well, next we're going to transition into swan pose. So this pose can sometimes often be quite intense for some people on the knee or the outer hip. So I'll offer some variations. So the variation, if this pose does not work for you, or doesn't work anatomically, or today it's just not your jam, you can come to do swan pose where you're coming to bring the right ankle across the top of the left thigh, and then come to bend through that left knee, planting the left foot. Bring the hands back behind you, slight lean back. So this is a variation of swan. If you are coming to find another variation of swan, come from your downward facing dog. So coming to lift the hips up and back. Extending the right leg back behind you for three-legged dog, and then bring the knee forward, gently place it behind the back of the right wrist. Slowly start to walk the left foot towards the back until you can't anymore. Place the left knee down, untuck the left toes. So you're coming to either bring that right heel in towards the groin, or if you're a little bit more flexible than me, you might be taking that shin slightly parallel to the top of the mat. You can invite in a block or a prop to place it underneath that right hip if it's hovering in the air. Allowing the chest to be open here. Maybe you're bringing a prop to the hands, helping to create a bit of height here as we take a few moments, a few rounds of breath in an active swan to begin with. And drawing the chin slightly down, gazing down towards the earth. And just noticing the sensations that are occurring here. Is there any pain, any discomfort? Can you lift up and back down and take some wiggles and jiggles till you find a setup that might feel a little bit more comfortable for you. And taking 3 more rounds of breath where you are. And then coming to either keep that prop where it is, coming to find sleeping swan. So you can either come to bring the elbows down towards that block. If you're looking for more, maybe you want something a bit softer. Maybe you're bringing the bolster down, taking the elbows out wide, creating a little pillow for your head. Or alternatively, you might be coming all the way down to the mat. Coming to settle in, finding your range, your depth. If you are seated in a seated sleeping swan, bringing the chin in towards the chest, allowing it to be as restorative as can be, but also as active as can be. So yin is not necessarily, it's far from a restorative practice. We work towards creating stress in the tissues to create space, to create openness, expansiveness. And we do this safely by listening and working with the body. Using the breath to support you here, and paying attention to the sensations within the body. Take in 3 more rounds of breath where you are. Slowly starting to come up, taking your time. Maybe you roll over to one side, swing the back leg in front of you, take the legs out wide and take a few windshield wipers. If you are in your seated swan, coming to unravel and taking some windshield wipers also. Maybe taking a pause on each side in your windshield wipers. And before making your way back into a tabletop, coming to tuck the toes, lift the hips under, finding downward facing dog. Maybe just taking a little pedal out through the right leg and left leg. Before extending that left leg back behind you for three-legged dog. Bending the knee, bringing the knee towards the chest, gently placing that knee behind the left wrist. Back toes are still tucked as you walk them back all the way till they can't no more, and then untuck the back toes, lower the back knee. Inviting in that block to come underneath the hip. Maybe that heel is in towards the groin, or maybe you're taking it slightly further away from the groin. Just working with your anatomy. Coming to sit more active in this swan pose, maybe bringing that prop underneath the hands to support you as we draw the chin towards the chest, gaze comes down. Taking a few rounds of breath here. Once again, drawing your attention towards the sensation that are currently occurring. Can you visualize softening into areas that possibly might feel slightly tighter or constricted than others? Breathing into these spaces, send in the breath there. When you feel ready, slowly start to descend, make your way down to your sleeping swan. Maybe your elbows come to blocks, maybe they come onto a bolster, or maybe you come all the way down, making a pillow for your head. If you are in a seated version of swan, maybe allowing the chin to slightly tuck in towards the chest. If you feel like you have found your edge and depth and you want to progress more, maybe you remove that block from underneath the hip and settle back in. And come to find some stillness. Come to resolve the need to move, possibly fidget, and try to soften and release where you can. Surrender to the tension, but with caution and awareness around what that might feel like. Is it tension once again, or is it pain? Can that tension be softened? And if you do soften it, comparatively, does it feel opening or twingy? And if it feels twingy, maybe you've gone too far. And listening to the body. Taking 3 more rounds of breath where you are. When you've done your final round of breath, there is no rush at all. Slowly, very mindfully making your way back up. And then rocking off, if that feels good for you, to the left hip. So you swing that right leg back out in front of you. Maybe you give the legs a little shimmy, a little shake. Or maybe you take those windshield wipers. And just coming to maybe notice what there is to notice in the legs and the hips, if there's anything to notice. And then once again, keeping props close by, come to turn to face the long edge of your mat.
So we're coming to find straddle pose. So taking the legs as wide as feels comfortable for you, but still keeping a slight softness in the back of the knees. And then there's a couple of options. You can either come to fold up a blanket so that you can place it underneath the pelvis, and when you bring it to the pelvis, you want it so that it creates a slight tilt for you. So you're just sitting on the edge of it, just enough so your pelvis tilts slightly forward. And that will help to create a bit of space in the low back if you have any low back pain or issues. And then coming to bring your props close by. So maybe you've got some blocks, stacking one on top of another. Maybe the forearms are coming and then the hands come to prayer. Chin comes in towards the chest with a slight lean forward. And maybe this is where you want to stay. If that edge or depth doesn't feel enough for you, maybe you take a block down. If once again you want to add on, maybe both forearms come down to the mat. Alternatively, you can bring in your bolster. You can bring that forward, take the arms, elbows out wide, bring the hands into one another to rest on top. Maybe bring forehead down. So many options. You can even come to hug the bolster, bend it slightly. Give it a little hug if you've got a nice stiff bolster like me as you come forward. Just take in any variations to find your depth, your edge. And when I say depth or edge, you might notice that I keep speaking about tension and stress. It's cultivating a sensation through the muscles. So with straddle, essentially we're coming into the back of the legs, the hamstrings, the calves, maybe even a little bit of the back, because in straddle, in yin, we kind of round. So you're getting into the lower back part, also maybe a bit of the mid back. And we want to feel sensation. We don't want to be just hanging around, maybe like a bit of a wet bit of lettuce, not feeling anything. The intention behind yin is to cultivate sensation, but safely. So if you're not feeling an edge, if you're not feeling a depth in terms of sensation, go a bit deeper. But do it gradually, do it slowly. Work your way. We've got the space, so we've got the time. And then come to settle when you find that edge or that depth. And once again, allowing the breath to be your guide into that depth also. Maybe drawing the chin slightly in towards the chest. Maybe closing down the eyes. Connecting to the body. Working your way through the body, noticing the different sensations. Making it a meditative practice, like the body scan that we began with. And coming to remain and resolve yourself still here. And resisting the urges to move and fidget. And sinking into the depth. You find that your edge once again has become slightly more comfortable. Maybe you come to remove any props.
And come to find yourself a little bit more into a different aspect of your edge. Allowing the breath to be sent to the body parts that need it most. Maybe visualize sending the breath to those areas, to the back of the legs, the back of the back body. Take in 3 more rounds of breath where you are. Very slowly and mindfully walking the hands back in towards the body. If you have extended forward, gently taking the hands behind the back of the knees, giving them a gentle guide in as you lean backwards. Bring the hands back behind you, take a lean back. Take some little windshield wipers side to side, counteracting. And then coming back to that straddle pose, and this time coming to bend that right knee, bring that right foot to the inner left thigh. If you find that that right knee is hovering in space, maybe you bring a prop underneath to support the right leg. Slowly start to turn and twist the body so that you're facing the right leg, the left leg, sorry. And then this might be where you want to stay. Take a round of breath here. Maybe you start to walk yourself forward before finding that range, that depth. You can always, if you've got extra blocks, maybe bring the blocks to the outside of the legs, bring the forearms down. If you've got your trusty friend, the bolster, it can come across the top of the thigh. And you can come once again to find yourself coming to lean over the bolster. And with this kind of half straddle variation, we're targeting some of the side body. We're also targeting into a twist. And we might be getting a little bit out into that hip on the right side possibly. Maybe even into the back of the left leg. So all sorts of yummy sensations going on here. We won't be here for too long. I'm just here for a few rounds of breath in this pose. If you've found that you've softened a bit more and want to venture a bit deeper for the last 15 to 20 seconds of being here, then feel free to work your way there now. And once again, being mindful that where is that force coming from? Noticing sometimes that our bodies also restrict us. Not necessarily can we always force ourselves into poses either. For me, my pelvis and my rib cage get caught on each other in this pose. So those interesting observations of the body are sometimes just what we need to also know that sometimes our bodies are just not able to do the things that we want them to do, and that's okay. Slowly working your way up. Removing that prop underneath the right knee. Sorry if you've taken it, gently allowing it to guide out, giving it a helping hand. Maybe taking those feet wide again, leaning back, taking some subtle windshield wipers side to side. Beautiful. Coming to find that wide-legged straddle again. And this time we're going to bring the left foot inside the right thigh.
And then just noticing what there is maybe in differences in this side compared to the other side. For me, I don't really need a block under this knee, whereas I did on the other knee. This hip is a lot more open than my other hip. There's no judgment attached, it's just observation. And then slowly starting to turn the body so that you're facing that right leg. Once again, either walking the hands forward, finding that slight forward fold. Maybe you're using those blocks, taking them to the outside of the legs, allowing the forearms to come down. Or maybe you've got that beautiful bolster across the top. Or maybe you're folding all the way forward. Just noticing what range it is that you want to go at. Finding your depth, your edge with awareness. And paying attention to the sensations. And when the mind wanders, bring it back to the body. As the sensations that you are feeling, good stretching sensations or releasing tension sensations, or is it compression that doesn't feel so comfortable? Do you need to come out and come back in? Maybe progressing your depth if it's there for you for another 15 to 20 second rounds. Slowly start to walk the hands back towards the body, removing any props out of the way, gently helping that left leg out, bringing that right leg in, taking that lean back and taking some counter windshields side to side. Maybe pausing for a moment on one side if it feels good. Beautiful. Okay. So we're coming to find saddle pose. So saddle pose is, there's many variations to saddle pose, but we're going to work with regressing it back. So saddle pose is essentially bringing the knees together, taking the feet out wider so that there's space that we can sit, essentially the sit bones through. But that can put a lot of load on the knees, on the ankles, on the hips, on the lower back. If you're comfortable in that pose and it feels good for you, go into it. Feel free to work with your variation. If you're coming with me, we're going to work with bringing a block underneath the hips. So we're bringing the knees towards one another, taking the feet out wide. If you're finding this is too much for the ankles, you can always fold up a blanket, create a little bit of extra padding through the feet. Once again, you don't have to keep the knees completely together if it is a little bit too much. So there's a couple of variations here. So come to bring that right foot forward so that the right foot is in line roughly with the left foot. And then slowly start to bring the hands back behind you. If the hands don't quite meet, once again use some props. But we're looking to create sensation through the front of the hip and essentially a little bit into the lower back. Now if you're finding that that's not enough for you, possibly remove that part from the back behind you and bring the hands down. If that isn't enough for you, maybe it's a case of that you come back up, you bring that right knee down, bring the knees together, slowly walk the hands back behind you, and maybe that's your sensation. So if you're working with single legs,
I'll let you know when it's half time to exchange legs. If we're working with legs together, finding this depth if it works for you. Alternatively, you can always come to bring the bolster behind you. Maybe you do find that seat and the block is not underneath you, and you come to lay back. Just being conscious of what feels good for you in either half saddle or saddle, and taking a regressed version, a more supported version, or if you wanted to, you can remove this bolster and come all the way back. So we are looking for some sensation in the front of the legs, possibly a little bit into the knees, into the front of the ankles, the lower back, even opening a bit into the chest if you're on the bolster. But once again, paying attention to, is it sensation or pain? And then there's discomfort. Discomfort doesn't always relate to pain. So discomfort is a sensation, depending on your body and what level of discomfort it's feeling. So if you're feeling that discomfort, can you soften? Can you resolve to remain still? Can you find your focus? And allow yourself to be in the posture without the judgment or the discomfort being analysed as such. If you notice that discomfort is pain, i.e. in the knee, in the low back, in the ankle, then come up. Maybe you're on the forearms, or maybe you're seated slightly up, leaning back. Just working with what works for you. Allowing the chin to come maybe in towards the chest if you are seated. Softening the eyes. If you are in half saddle, coming to change over and swap the legs. Doing so slowly and mindfully. Bringing that awareness once again into the areas that you might want to move or fidget in. Can you find stillness there? And does the stillness create a sensation that doesn't feel good? If you're feeling tingling or an electrical feeling or a sensation of numbness, maybe you've gone too far. Maybe you regress slightly. Tuning into the breath, connecting breath to mind and body. Taking 3 more rounds of breath where you are. Slowly coming up if you've lowered yourself all the way back, very mindfully, or if you have a creative way that you like to come out of your saddle, feel free to. And slowly lift the hips up and walk the hands in front of you. Slowly start to walk the knees back. Just take a moment maybe to rock backwards and forwards. Maybe you even come into a down dog just to straighten out through the legs, but doing so ever so slowly and mindfully. Or maybe you're just bringing the legs ahead of you and giving them a little wiggle and a jiggle. But just knowing when they've been in a pose like that, often it can create a little bit of achiness or achiness. So it can take a little bit sometimes to bring those sensations back to certain areas if they have slightly gone to sleep. Beautiful. And when you're ready, there's no rush. We're all going to make our way down onto our backs, onto the mat. We're coming to find that comfy blankie so it's all stretched out. And taking a full body stretch when you make your way here. And from this full body stretch, start to take your feet over towards the left side. So maintaining the torso so it's in the middle of the mat, but the feet are coming over towards the left bottom corner. And then slowly start to take your hands over towards the left top corner of the mat. Finding Banana Asana or half crescent moon, as I prefer to call it, on your mat. Coming into this posture, noticing if you are wanting something a bit deeper, maybe you're taking the right ankle over the top of the left, or maybe you're taking hold of the right wrist with the left hand, or maybe taking hold of opposite elbows. If the arms above the head aren't working, you can always bring them down beside you. Just take in your variation. Once again, tuning into the body, listening into the sensations being created. And breathing into the right side body. Maybe that gaze is coming up, or maybe it's slight tuck of the chin, bringing it to nestle into the left arm if you've got the arms raised. And taking 3 more rounds of breath where you are. Next round of breath, unhooking the hands, the arms, the feet, coming back through center. Taking a full body stretch, maybe drawing the knees in towards the chest, giving them a little squeeze. And then re-extending nice and long before walking the feet over towards the right side, sending the hands over towards the top right corner. Body stays in the middle of the mat. Finding Banana Asana, stretching down the left side of the body. The variations are there for you. Once you feel ready, maybe taking the left ankle over the top of the right, maybe left wrist with right hand, or maybe taking hold of opposite elbows. Maybe the head comes to cradle onto the right shoulder. If the shoulders aren't feeling like they want that, maybe they're bringing the arms, maybe you're bringing the arms down the side of the body. And take in some nice deep inhales and exhales. Breathing into the side body, that left side body. Maybe you're noticing that sensation coming up through the left hip, left stomach, left rib cage, armpit. Or maybe you're noticing the sensations elsewhere. Taking 3 more rounds of breath where you are. Coming to unravel the arms, the legs, drawing yourself back through center, maybe give the knees a little squeeze in towards the body. Coming to send the legs up towards the ceiling, giving the legs a little wiggle and jiggle backwards and forwards, and then allowing the legs just to hang in mid-air for waterfall pose. If you want a little bit extra, you can always bring in the block or the bolster underneath the sacrum, not the lower back, onto the sacrum area, and then extend the legs. Or maybe you're taking the legs up the wall if you're close by a wall. Just allowing the legs to hang in mid-air, draining all the energy towards the body. And the legs and the feet do so much for us. They carry us all day long. Our legs up the wall is a beautiful pose to work on into your daily routine and just offer a little bit of nourishment and support to the leggies. And taking 3 more rounds of breath. There is no rush, taking your time. Before slowly allowing the feet to come back down to the mat, removing any props if you added them in. And then coming to make your way into Shavasana. So you can extend the legs long and wide, take the arms out wide. Maybe if you want something a little bit more restorative for the back of the knees, coming to bring a bolster underneath. Maybe if you wanted to be extra cozy, bringing in an extra blanket, putting that on top, maybe a pillow under the head, maybe some blocks underneath the arms. And coming to settle in and find a really comfortable setup for your Shavasana. And when you've found your way there, there is no rush, taking your time cultivating your space and your final resting pose. We're just taking a few moments to settle in, any last minute wiggles and jiggles, finding that extra comfort, that extra 5 to 10% more comfort if you can. Maybe closing down the eyes or taking a soft gaze. Drawing a big inhale in through the nose if it's there for you. And then a big sigh out through the mouth. Taking one more round, maybe that sigh is slightly more audible. Letting everything go. That felt really good, maybe taking one more. Before coming to surrender and let go and allow the mat, the foundations beneath you, to support you, to hold you, to care for you. And coming to find your Shavasana, we will be here for some time. When it is time to come out, I will guide you. Until then,
slowly start to return to the body, return to the space you're in. Maybe listening to some external noises that might be outside of the room or in the room. Coming to maybe tune back into the breath, noticing the breath as it comes in and out of the body. Inviting in some movement into the fingers, the toes. If you are super enjoying where you are, maybe you remain and stay where you are in your Shavasana. Or if you're coming to close off your practice, come to remove the props from beneath you, rolling over to one side, taking a round of breath here. Very slowly and mindfully coming up to rise, coming to find a seat. Drawing the hands into heart center, bringing the gaze down towards the earth, bowing your head to yourself for your practice, for your space, for taking the time to cultivate space for your practice. And deepest gratitude to each of you, from my heart to yours. And thank you ever so much for practicing with me, for allowing me to be your guide here today. I hope you enjoyed your yin class. I hope that it's offered you moments of reflection, moments of nourishment. Yeah. And I look forward to seeing you again on the mat. Thanks ever so much, guys. Wishing you a great day, great evening, week, month, year, life. Everything and anything. Take care. Bye.